Hey guys, it's Selwen here, continuing the old warrior now on protection, and protection has been through very weird phases in BFA. It started off the same as in Legion, then got Ignore Pain removed because apparently it was too overpowered in the world of homogenization on the tanks. Then we got a new mitigation based on armor, bolster, and now it's gone as well. And we went back to just having shield block and ignore pain, although slightly changed from Legion. So yeah, just went around in a big circle, and hopefully this time around it will stay and this video will stay relevant. But remember to check down in the description for any videos posted by myself for any updates. Now, let's look at all of your abilities here in the spellbook and talk about all those changes, as there are a few plus some new toys. As for your artifact stuff, is all gone okay? Pretty much all of it. So first on here we have Avatar. Yep, it is now baseline. It's basically our new DPS cooldown as we lost a battle cry, and to be honest, Avatar is much more fitting for protection than just critting. It lasts for 20 seconds, causing you to deal 20% increased damage and removing all roots and snares, which is pretty useful for tanks, and generates 20 rage on a 1.5 minute cooldown. It is on a global cooldown, which is quite annoying, but it's cool having this ability now for protection. Battle Shout is back as your class buff to just increase attack power for everyone in a group for 10%, which is also cool. Heroic Leap is here and is the same and not on the global cooldown, so yay for us. And Heroic Throw and Berserker Rage is the same also, and not on the global cooldown. So Ignore Pain is back after some trembling past here in BFA. It's now weaker than in Legion, but also cheaper. It's now a flat 40 rage cost and only ignoring 50% of the damage instead of 90%, and then it will basically absorb damage, just like in Legion. So mechanically it still mostly works the same, just weaker like I said, but you can use it more often, especially when we get to decent gear and we are able to use Devastator again. So if you like prots in Legion, it's pretty much the same on that regard. I'm sure some will like it and some will hate this. I'm on the side of it's okay. One thing you will need to get used to though, it's the global cooldown. Yeah, so no more spamming in between your attacks now. It works fine, it's really no issue, you kinda have to think about it more, but yes, it will take some time getting used to that global cooldown. Such is the world that we live in. Demoralizing Shout still here to reduce damage taken to all enemies around you in the form of a debuff. And so is Intercept, Devastate, and Intimidating Shout, it's all the same. As for Last Stand, is now weaker due to the loss of the traits, at only increasing 30% of your HP. In the second page, we get your Interrupt and Shockwave. Yes, it is now baseline as well, thank you for that. This was something that basically every warrior took, especially in dungeons, so it's nice to have it baseline to open up the other talent choices. The cooldown is now 30 seconds and is not reduced by the target's hit, but there's a talent for that, more on that in a bit. Your old Commanding Shout for that HP buff is still here, and so is Spell Reflection for your magic mitigation. It reflects some spells and reduces magic damage taken by 15%, lasts for 5 seconds on a 20-second cooldown. It's not as powerful as in Legion, but I'll take it since magic damage in BFA is supposed to be much more dangerous to tanks, and it is, so it's nice to have this. Your Revenge is still working in the same also, cleaving and with the free proc when you dodge or parry. As for shield block, it went through some changes. It now costs 30 rage up from 15 and still makes you block all attacks and stuff, plus increasing the shield slam damage by 30% while active. But blocking in general, even for things like paladins, has changed. So in Legion, the way it worked is that you reduce damage by about 40% for each block, mainly on auto attacks, but other melee abilities could also be blocked. And blocks in general could also critical block, which would reduce double of that damage percentage. Now in BFA, block is tied to your armor. Once again, this is because of the homogenization all tanks have suffered in BFA, by making armor the go-to mitigation for all tanks in terms of physical damage, usually tied to your main stat, which in the case of the warrior is strength. You even get the passive here called Vanguard that states that your armor is increased by 40% of your strength. So making your primary stat, so strength, so item level really, and in turn armor the main stat for tanks. So back to the blocks themselves. What it does now is simply increase your armor when you block to decrease damage taken instead of that percentage like in Legion. So as you can see in the tooltip here, blocking adds 1280 armor against an attack, increasing physical damage reduction to 66%. For the most part, this is just number stuff, it's not really gonna interfere with your gameplay. Gameplay wise, you're gonna use them in the same situations. And you can still critical block obviously as your mastery improves it here, just to make that double more powerful. Contrary to Ignore Pain, it is not on a global cooldown, so happy days. Thunderclap, your main AoE is still here, generating 5 rage. The reduction on movements was nerfed, now it's only at 20%, but you do have a new talent that helps there, more on that in a bit. Your Shield Slam here as your main ability, your big generator of rage by giving 15 and doing the most damage, and your Devastate, Thunderclap and Revenge still have that 30% chance to reset the cooldown, so your second proc. And then, needless to say, Shield Wall and Victory Rush still here, working all in the same way. As for your passives, you still have Deep Wounds for the bleed on Devastates and Revenges, and the other two we already talked about. Now let's talk about your talents, shall we? So what do we get here? Well, in the first year, we now get into the fray. You gain 3% haste per enemy or ally within 10 yards up to 15%. This was a talent in Legion that wasn't bad by any means, but rarely taken simply due to where it was placed in your talent tree. In between Booming Voice and Vengeance made it not very appealing, plus it was sort of unreliable. This placement favors it much more, plus the fact that it now benefits from allies as well makes it far more interesting, allowing you to even take in raids and you're just gonna get that buff from the melee. Although there might be moments where it won't be that reliable. That said, haste is generally quite important to you as well, to decrease the cooldown of shield block and eventually enabling you to go to that Devastator type of playstyle, which is very dependent on haste. So what does this talent goes up against? Well, Punish is a new one. Yes, a talent is called Punish. Your Shield Slam does 20% increased damage, plus when you use it, it reduces enemies' damage against you by 3%. It's not a lot, but hey, it's more survivability. The increase on damage on the slam is also pretty decent, especially when you also put heavy repercussions on here as well. All in all, I think Into the Fray will be more interesting to take, simply how haste interacts with your rotation. Impending Victory is also here, just making your Victory Rush usable at any time. You know what it does, it has its niche in terms of survivability by making you a bit safer, if you will. Second tier, you get Cracking Thunder for 40% more radius on your Thunderclap. I never felt the need to use this, but hey, it's still here for mainly dungeons and multi-targeting. And Bounding Stride for more heroic leaps, and Safeguard here as well for utility-ish. Again, same as in Legion, kind of situational and choose what you prefer kind of thing. In the third tier, we actually get some new things. Best Served Cold is still here from Legion to just increase revenge damage per mob hit. It's okay, does what it does. But Dragon Roar made its way to Protection. Yes, I always loved this ability, and it was kinda sad that it was lost to the Nether. Never really found its niche in Legion, on Fury that is, I think it was a talent there. But I guess it found a home here in Protection. Even though it's still a talent present in the Fury spec, keep a lookout in the next days for a preview on Fury, which is so good. Basically just an AoE and reducing movement speed by 50%, so it's great for dungeons and obviously feels very satisfying to use because simply it's a very cool ability. Unstoppable will kind of take a similar approach, this time just to boost your avatar. While it's active, your Thunderclap does double the damage and reduces its cooldown by 50%, so just allows you to get some pretty decent numbers when popping avatar during trash packs and whatnot. It makes avatar overall more interesting and it's quite fun to almost spam thunderclaps, especially when you combine this with anger management. More on that in a bit. Next, you still have your Indomitable, just increasing your HP by 10%. Alright. Never Surrender makes your Ignore Pain prevent up to 100% more damage based on your missing health, making it more powerful. And Bolster, Last Stand cooldown is reduced by 1 minute and it causes you to block all melee attacks. This tier you're just gonna be choosing depending on what you're gonna need. Do you want a stronger Ignore Pain throughout? Or just have a bigger HP pool to take more hits, or you just rather to have Last Stands to be more powerful. The blocking part of the talents kinda reminds me of Neltharian's Fury, so you're gonna be using Last Stands in more interesting ways, which is cool. It kinda adds a new layer to it. Next, you have your utility, Rumbling Earth, basically adds that cooldown reduction on Shockwave when it strikes 3 targets, so back to what it was. Menace, however, turns your Intimidating Shout, which is a fear, to instead Cower in Fear. So quite interesting to take in Mythic Plus to serve as a second interrupt and whatnot. I'm sure it will be a valuable asset. Or you can go for Stormbolt, which is just another stun, but just singular if you so need. Next, you get your Booming Voice. Demoralizing Shout also generates 40 rage and increases the damage you deal to the affected targets by 15%. So this is kinda the same as in Legion, so this was a little bit nerfed, and turns what otherwise is a defensive cooldown into an offensive one, just to get rage and deal a bit more damage. The rage provided feeds you directly into Ignore Pain, which is very useful. Vengeance is still here working in the same way, you know, it works. I just feel Booming Voice is more reliable in terms of rage management. And Devastator is now in this tier. You probably know all about it. Turns your Devastate into a passive, just proccing from auto attacks with a 20% chance to proc your Shield Slam. This generally works best once you get your haste values up there to get those procs going for Shield Slams and in turn improve your rage. Otherwise, Booming Voice feels and works better to generate rage, especially at these low levels. And finally, on the last tier, you still get Anger Management to reduce the cooldowns of your Last Stand, Shield Wall and Demoralizing Shout by 1 second per rage used. So works great defensively, so you can use those cooldowns more often, but also offensively with Demoralizing Shout if you're taking Booming Voice, just like in Legion. That said, it also affects Avatar, so it's gonna make Unstoppable Force quite more interesting, as you're gonna be able to use it much more frequently. Even Bolster, as then you will be able to get Last Stands every 1 minute or so. So yeah, it synergizes great with your talents, just like in Legion, even more so here, and is great in any situation. Heavy Repercussions is your go-to for big physical damage. Shield Slam extends the duration of Shield Block by 1 second, and Shield Block increases the damage of Shield Slam by an additional 30%. So yeah, makes it more powerful to block attacks, but also can be good with Punish for even bigger Shield Slams, like I said previously. Ravager is still here for just raw AoE damage. Still has that parry chance, but between this and Anger Management just feels better even for damage if that's something that you need. I would personally like to see other talents in its place, but there you go. So guys, that is the new Protection Warrior. After all those changes, it's still pretty much like it is on Legion, like deep down it really is. Yeah, you got some pretty cool new toys and improvements to your cooldowns, like your talent tree is full of them, and in turn it creates a lot of synergy in them and of course makes them far more interesting, like Avatar or even Last Stand. Gameplay wise, it's fine. If you like the Legion playstyle, you will like this one. You just kinda have to get used to all the global cooldowns, like on Ignore Pain, Avatar, demoralizing shouts in between your main abilities, so yeah, it is quite annoying and it will take a while. Hell, even commanding shouts, which now has a new name, which I cannot pronounce, is on a global cooldown. The talent tree also does fix a couple of talents like Into the Fray by placing it in another tier, the turning to off shockwave to baseline, the shuffling of things like Devastator. It does make it feel more cohesive and gives more compelling choices to make. Gameplay wise, again, it's very much like Legion. You're probably gonna start playing with Devastate and eventually with gear and whatnot. You will probably move on to Devastator as that will provide a better rage, and with all the global cooldowns will also provide a more fluid rotation, and you will get that spammy type of playstyle that you have now in Legion. So yeah, guys, do let me know what you all think of Protection. Remember to check down below for any links on updates. And you might have noticed a little in the footage on the background how I'm losing threats on some mobs. That's not me being noobish. I mean, I'm kind of being noobish a little bit due to all the global cooldowns, but that's just the threat nerf Blizzard has introduced recently to the tanks. That's a topic for another time, but will also take some getting used to if it goes through to live. Anyway, as always, guys, thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more videos like this. Have a fantastic day, everyone, and I will see you all next time. See ya!